Welcome everybody, greetings, kia ora. Welcome to everybody watching from all over the world and to people watching this video later. This is our third Try This planning online support session, and we'll be looking at our third key. So Tim's going to share his screen so that we can see the slides that are going to guide us. And the first thing we're going to talk about is if anybody has had a go at key number 2, which is what we talked about in our last recording, which is the experience, the action key. That's the one where we get into a story and we let's all be the people in the story. So I don't know if anybody here has got, I'm looking at you quite small now, has it, oh, Ulysses, you've got a story to tell us. Over to you.
Yeah, so I run a diploma on applied theater.
Yeah.
And we're on the module of theater in education, and I selected a story from a book of Edmundo Amicis. It's known by Heart, Diary of a Child, or something like that.
Okay.
So it has very little stories of different situations. This one is about the little boy from Padua, I believe. And so I managed to mix the two keys, key 1 and key 2, into the story. Participants are adults. And we had a very good time. The participants learned. I selected this dynamic for being an introduction to what are they called? Oh fuck. Well, anyhow, to introduce them to the use of dramatic inquiry into the processing of a story. And they really enjoyed it, and they went really into the story as we were depicting what would you let's all be, and how would you make a solution out of this, it was really great.
Oh, that's so great to hear. It sounds like just having that little bit of structure gave you a way to start, and then it's great to hear that as adults they responded positively too.
Yeah, they really felt the story coming alive and they being into the story, so it was something like being in the middle. You are not abandoning your reality, but you are engaged into the story. So they found it very useful in terms of grasping a story and being completely captured by it.
Thank you for mentioning that, because I think that's that very important point that you just said, the not being captured by the story, not being swept up by it, but maintaining a critical awareness of yourself in the situation. That is absolutely what we're going for in dramatic inquiry. We can go to movies if we want to be swept up and forget ourselves and come back to reality, but in dramatic inquiry we're always going for that state of what we call metaxis, that in-between state where we know we're in a story and we know ourselves as real people too, so that we're able to critically reflect and examine what we're thinking and how we're making meaning. So if you achieve that, that's primo. Well done. May I ask, when you said you were exploring the tension with key 1 as well, what is the tension in that book? What is the problem or the turning point that book explores?
In that story in particular, the boy is a boy who was sold by his parents to a puppeteer, and he escaped because of the malnourishment and the abuse he was suffering. And so at the beginning of the story, the author depicts the boy completely isolated and rejecting the world. So it was a perfect opportunity to, like, I was like, so I will go like this, and then they get into what do you think that has happened to this boy in order for him to be like this? I mean, it's not usual, you know,
Mm,
sort of that
fantastic.
kind of questions we were asking at the beginning.
Well, thank you. Thanks for sharing that. And if you do have an opportunity to share that on the website, we can put it in the shared teacher planning site as well, because I think that would be a lovely international example for us all. Thank
Sure,
you for sharing that.
will do.
Does anybody else from the group want to report on something they've done with Key 2 or indeed Key 1? Anybody else had a go at experience the action?
If I had a go, I think I was after speaking with Susan on the tricycle, the story about the tricycle.
Yeah.
I had to go and relieve a year 1 teacher, and I brought the story in. And we started to enact, or it was just a natural way of the kids to let's be the Margarita on the branch, looking over and seeing what's happening. And just when I was using experience the action with them, it was such it was such a natural way to produce that that stage in between, the state of in between, and they were able to be themselves but yet experience the 5 senses without going overboard. And
Right.
and creating that tension is like, let's all be, what if you were able to see the tricycle being pulled away? How show me how that feels like. And it was quite a really key moment where I knew that the kids were hooked. Yeah.
And how easy did you find it to find the plus question as you
It
were?
was really easy, just because we're all in the moment.
Right.
And just by using the 5 senses, like what if you know, who could have caught you at that moment? How would you have felt? Or can you hear your mother coming, because she is right behind you? And just oh my gosh, I can hear it. And the panic some of the kids felt like, but they weren't overly acting. They were like, oh gosh, they were panicking with inside.
So it's an engagement without getting too actily about it.
Yeah, because
I'm so pleased you were able to find those pluses, because it's hard to describe when you're talking about the planning of it. But if you go there and if you put your body in the position, suddenly it's not an effort, because you are full of questions, because you're in the world and you have inquiry around you, but it's difficult to trust that. So it's nice for other teachers to hear you say, oh no, it just comes through your senses, those questions.
Absolutely. And because when you're 100% committed to the story and committed to the character and committed to feeling and as a teacher providing that opportunity for this for the kids to let's all be. And another thing is that it kind of led in way into Margarita while she was under the bed and she was eating the grapes.
Yeah.
About 20, when I was working with these 20 year 1 students, they were all eating the grapes as if they were in thought.
And you ones are 5-year-olds, right?
Magical.
And it's those micro moments that help them focus, isn't it?
Yeah.
Beautiful. But we must put that example in the shared planning, because that's a quality picture book and it's got such relevance and such resonance to world events at the moment and these conflicts happening between we'll put that up so people can see what Jen is talking about, what she used for her experience the action experience. Thank you, Jen. That's really fantastic. It's so great to get teacher examples. It's really rewarding, Tim? Can we move on to the next slide, Tim, there?
All right.
And carry on. What you were going to say? Carry on.
No, I was just reflecting on how important it is, like you were saying, to be 100%. the children are looking at us to see what's our attitude towards it. So we have to go full in. Can't be sort of pretending or sort of on, or sort of not quite doing it. We've got to commit ourselves. And if they see us committing, then they'll go, well, okay, so because you're kind of basically saying, well, I'm going in this, and this is what I'm going to do. So here's a grape. Very nice. Try one of your own, and then children go, oh, okay, I see what this is.
Yeah.
If you pretend, if you sort of, do you see what I mean by pretend? Not quite going all the way in, so sort of a halfway in. I think pretend it doesn't work so well because the children are picking up that you're not fully committed. So a lovely illustration of that. Thank you.
Beg your pardon, I'm getting a call, but I'm going to ignore it.
Yeah.
So yes, that going right in, it's the difference between show me and let's all be, isn't it? Let's all be is an invitation to be inside with me together. Thank you, Tim. Can you just move our slides on?
Right. Yeah.
I'm hoping this call is going to stop soon. Can you hear it tingling?
No.
No, good. All right. So I just, again, anybody else busting to share an example from Experience the Action? We've had 2 there. Anybody else want to talk?
Can I say something?
Yes,
Yeah.
please. The more the merrier.
Well, I've become a little more relaxed and using it just as the opportunity pops up. So I also teach year 0s, 1s, and so we do reading groups every day, and I've been using these keys more and more just as part of the time when we do our reading to just get more engagement and a deeper understanding of what we're reading, because I'm finding, yes, now my kids are decoding beautifully, but actually understanding it at a reasonable depth is becoming more of an issue. So we had one where we had this little girl, and she had through the story, her big brother had made the choices over what they'd spend their money on for the fair, and finally she ended up holding the money and finally getting to choose what she could do. So we, I said, let's all be Maddie, standing there holding the money, and look around you. What do you see? And so we looked around us, and we added so much to the story. It was a simple story because we were just beginning, but we actually were inferring in the story and building the story beyond what the text told us. And so it was a lovely conversation about, well, but that's not what the story said. And so then I could say, well, you're being so clever that we're actually inferring from the story more than what the words are telling us just by using this key. And it was just like, it just started to happen, like you say, it just starts to come to you, like we all chose different things to do at the fair with our money, but we were all Maddie in the story.
Isn't that lovely? Just as you were talking there, I was thinking about that. When you're 5, the texts you're going to be decoding are going to be fairly simple and straightforward, but that doesn't mean that the worlds of imagination that they could unlock have to be simple and straightforward. They can be complex, and the children's minds and imaginations at their age are really complex and layered. And so I love what a key like this teaches children about what a story is. A story is a bit of the world written down, but if we step into that world, we can do other things with it. I mean, that's what we want children to understand stories are. They're not just words on a page. They're not just simple texts. And I love how it allows simplicity and complexity to interrelate. So as we in New Zealand move to a new regime where we are required to do an hour of literacy every day, why not do it this way? Yeah. Yeah, fantastic.
Yeah.
Thank you. That does my heart good to hear that. So again, let's put that one up on the shared site. If you can make it to the Try This site, there's a space where we invite you to enter what you've been doing. Or if that's too complicated, just email me and I'll pop it up there for you, because I think it's great for people to see this variety. Same key, unlocking different worlds, different content for different age groups of learners, and still working. Great stuff. Thanks, Rachel. Last chance for someone. It's probably time to hear one more if someone wants to squeeze one in, because it's hearing your stories is great. Anyone? Going? Gone. All right, then we'll move on to key 3, which is, look, it says key 2 on the slides because I didn't quite edit it properly. It's key 3, solve a clue. And in this key, this is about if you're going to see so many parallels and overlaps between the different keys. If you think about what we do in key 1, we use we have a thing that's like a boundary between the real world of the classroom and the imagined world of the story. And in that case, the thing is the teacher, right? The teacher takes on a role in tackle a problem in key 1, and the teacher is kind of that invitation into the story, right? In key 2, it's the invitation, the let's all be, that takes them into the story. In key 3, the boundary object, the thing that takes us into the story, is a physical clue. So it's a thing we can hold in our hand. And you'll see in other clues, in other keys, when we get there, the thing might be drawn. But in this example, I think we've talked about making it a physical clue, a thing you can hold in your hand. An object or a sign. So I mean, that sign could be a 2-dimensional thing, but in both of our examples, it's actually I think yours is a 3-dimensional clue as well, isn't it, Tim, in your example?
Yeah, no, I was just reflecting on that. I think I mean, they are, both of the examples are actually objects, but a sign, but the difference between drawing it and a sign would be that the sign would look authentic. It would be like a real sign or something like that. It's not something constructed or made in front of the students.
In front of them, no.
That's basically.
Yeah, and I think there's something incredibly novel and something. Yeah, we'll talk about what we think the advantages of that are. So what I'm going to do is just take you through the New Zealand, or the example that I put in the book as a New Zealand example. It's not actually an example from Aotearoa New Zealand. It's taken from a picture book, again, that isn't necessarily, it isn't a New Zealand book, but it's the Aotearoa New Zealand example, as in the person from Aotearoa New Zealand who co-authored this book has used it in her classroom. So without further ado, I'm just gonna kind of describe to you what happens. So this is based on a drama I've been teaching for a long time, with quite a bit of success, and I'm going to talk to you about how I've changed it over time. But it works with a series of mysterious objects. In Tim's example, he just works with a single object, and you could do this with a single object, but I'm talking about a real example, and in my case, I've actually got a series of objects, a series of clues, and I'm going to show you in a moment what those are. But I would like you to imagine, as a teacher, placing these things around a classroom so that the children come in and find these clues. And we don't take the children straight into the space. It's one of the things I used to do, is I used to take them straight into the space without any further ado, and they'd simply find the clues. But now I've learned to take a step first, which is to signal the fact that this is a drama. This is an imagined world. So if you can imagine that, can you just imagine that you are a group of children for me, and we're outside the classroom, and I'm going to say, can we come in? Gather closely. I'm going to tell you what's going on. I'm going to explain what's going on. So there's no delusion here. There's no, this is real. It's very clearly signaled. And I say, we're going to make a story together. It's very clearly going to make a story together. And in a minute, when we go inside, you're going to see a whole lot of clues that I've set up to help us bring our story to life. You see what we're doing there? It's not like, oh, I wonder what we're going to see. I'm leveling with them. And that is, I think, a really important aspect. And we'll talk about why later. They are a bit mysterious, these clues, and we'll take some working out. So I'm going to ask you to come on into our space as if you are a team of investigators who've been brought in to look at these clues. All right. And we could even spend a bit of time building that sense of ourselves as investigators. But I usually do it as a story. Once upon a time, in an ordinary house, in an ordinary street, the family got home to find that some kind of monster had been in their home. And the parents called the Monster Investigation Bureau. That's us. Hello. And then you can even kind of have someone on the phone talking to the investigators and setting up. That's another kind of step. Oh, I see. That sounds serious. Yes, I think we could we help? You know, you sort of bring the children in. And then once everybody was sure that the monster had left the scene, the investigators arrived to check it out. So we've established what's going on. It's clearly not a monster investigation, a monster invasion of the classroom, which is what I used to do. And you can see the difference, can't you? Monster investigation of the classroom, that's presenting it as part of the real world. With clearly it's happening inside a house. And I must admit, when I first started kind of signaling it that clearly, I felt a bit disappointed because it felt like there was less novelty when they walk in. But when they walk in and there's all those clues around, there's no fun that's been spoiled. So the clues that they see when they walk in.
Viv, before you carry on, can I just unpack that a little bit?
Yeah, of course.
Because you did a lot of stuff very quickly there.
Yes. I was going to unpack it later, but let's unpack it now.
Do you want to do that?
No, unpack it now because you're.
I think by the time you get, because there's more.
Yeah, go. Yeah.
So the issue here about the students telling the students, it's a little bit counterintuitive because that's not really how things work. In when you think about it, it feels a little bit like you're going against the idea of immersion, that you want them to be immersed in it. The problem is that and this is took me a long time to kind of work out what the issue was. But the thing is that when you go to the theatre, or if you go to the cinema, or you read a book, there's something there telling you that that's a fiction. So when you go to the theatre, you walk into a theatre and there's a stage and a curtain and the music comes and the lights go down. You know that the play has started, that what's happening on the stage is not real. If you take the children into a space that they don't realise is a theatre space, which is the classroom, they may walk into that unsure that it's not real. There isn't enough there to say to them that's a fiction.
That's right.
So they'll become confused. Now they might not believe it. That's not really the problem so much as them kind of trying. Their concentration is on what's going on here. You know, what is this? You know, is this real? That's where their concentration will be, rather than on what's actually happening in the fiction. So the simplest way of doing that, because you don't have curtains on the stage and all the rest of it, and neither would you wouldn't want to do it that way, is to tell them. So you heard in the introduction that Viv gave that she just explained to them that they're entering into a story, and then when you open the door, that's going to be something that's happening in a story, and that's it. But that step is so important in terms of the setting.
It so is, and I think I've told you this story lots of times, Tim. But as a student myself, as a small child, I experienced a number of immersive experiences with teachers and different people where they didn't signal that it was fiction.
Right.
I was invited into a house that had been burgled to investigate the clues, and I just froze in the middle of the room going, we shouldn't be touching anything. Like, I was just totally confused as to why a bunch of children had been taken into a house that had been burgled. I didn't get it. And it was actually quite quite unsettling. I still remember the kind of dark, confused feelings I had. It was certainly not empowering for me. Whereas if somebody outside had said, right, in our story, we're detectives, that would have actually been true, for one thing, and just would have let me get on with it. So Don O'Toole has this phrase, which I love, which is tell the children the rules of the game and they can get on with playing the game. Don't tell them the rules of the game and they will spend their time guessing, trying to work out the rules of the game. It's not actually the rules of the game that is the focus here. And as storytellers and parents who do, you know, Santa Claus and Tooth Fairy and that kind of thing, sorry, small person present, we think it's more enriching to do story. We think there's a magic there that we're spoiling, but we're not. It isn't. And I've worked a lot with theatre companies on this too. You know, there are a number of theatre companies in the world that do sort of these immersive things for children. But what happens is the children kind of do what in New Zealand we call the stunned mullet. You know, they just kind of go, what am I seeing? And that's not joyous, actually. It's just a quick conversation outside, go on in, and then they really let rip. And so I've seen both versions of this. Back in the day when I used to say, I think there's been a monster in the classroom, children would come in genuinely scared, or kind of going, no, it's not, that's not. And then you've got to deal with that. You know, now it's like, right, we've got a story and there are a bunch of clues in there and you're investigators and are we ready? We're going in. And even now, sometimes the children will go, oh, this is scary. And I go, yes, it's a scary story. Are we ready? Are we ready for the scary story? And it's just, it feels so much more, you know, decent to the children.
And safer. It's safer.
And safer.
If you know it's a fiction, nothing.
Yeah,
it's
you can get on with the inquiry in the fiction.
Exactly. You can
it's
just
not our job to. It's not our job to enchant and beguile. It's our job to teach, actually. So I feel really strongly about that.
The second thing you did is to cast the children, or to position the children, give them a role, not as themselves, but as a team of investigators. So that's the second very important thing there. And again, it's a very simple thing, very easy to miss, but crucial in the setup. So the line, you know, so we're going to be the investigators, and then straight into the fiction with the phone call. It's like the children are going, okay, we're investigators. We're not a class of children going into a classroom looking at something. We're people with responsibility, and people who, as you say, why have they asked, when you talked about your own experience, why have they asked a bunch of kids to look at a burglary? That's not what children do. Children don't do things like that. Well, they do in a story if they are kinds of people who do, which in this case are investigators, which of course is what the job of investigators. So again, that's very simple, but it's easy to miss.
And both of those steps are things that I initially didn't used to do in this drama, and I now do, and I can see the way that for one thing, it's more ethical, which is important, and for the other thing, the learning, the inquiry is so much richer, because if you hit that room as an investigator, you can probably imagine it yourself. If I said, come in, children, I think there's been a monster in our classroom, that's one response. But if I position you as, right, they've got the best people here, it's a sort of a mini mantle. We're giving you the mantle of expertise, right? So I will continue. So I even have in the past sometimes given children the clipboard with the monster investigation profile on it, that you know, they can write what they think the clues are telling us about the monster, and so on and so forth. And when they go into the room, if you can imagine about 30 of these on the you know, in a suitable pattern across the floor, you know, can you see it? And several of these, I don't know if you can see that in the light, but this sort of looks like scratches. So it might be up on the window. Is that going
on the windows then, or something?
Yeah, you got it. It's going up on the window so that the scratches are showing. There's, if you're looking on the slide there's a picture of a book with a bite out of it. I said to Tim, I've lent my book with a bite out of it to somebody. I don't know who. If you've got it, please, I'd love to have it. But it's a book a bit like this, and I used a jigsaw and I actually cut, I know, heresy, but I cut a bite out of this book. And so there's that in the corner of the room. There's bits of, can you imagine, bits of fluff? Not too much, just bits and pieces that suggest our story coming to life. And they're clues. Now, when Tim talks about his example, I think his example of this key allows for much more of an open-ended kind of response. You know, it could be all sorts of things. In this case, we've signaled this is a monster, but the question is, the inquiry is, what kind of monster? You may or may not have noticed in the story that I said, in the story, the monster is safely departed. So now we're going in to look at the clues that the monster's left. That's because for a number of times that I did this, I didn't say that, and the children didn't want to go in very sensibly. Don't want to go in if the monster might be there. So if you know the monster has departed and we're just looking to find out what kind of monster it is, you can imagine. Can you imagine as a, you know, I've done it with 5-year-olds, I've done it with 13-year-olds. Can you imagine those children walking around with their clipboards? What are they going to say when they find the footprints? What are they going to say and infer about this monster, do you think? What would you say? Can you imagine yourself as a child seeing footprints like this? What kind of monster have we got, investigators?
Big and robust one.
Why do you say he or she or they must be big?
I mean, it looks almost like the size of your face, so
right.
Bigger than. So yeah.
Right. And that's complicated, isn't it? Complicated inference there. And you have to explain that, and you have to, you know, either put it on your profile or explain it back to each other about what you're inferring there. And of course, where you place the footprints, can you imagine them going across the room and there's a knocked over chair and then they've leaped up there? I think he's run and he's jumped and he's leapt up there and he's scratching at the window, so he must be desperately trying to get, and they infer so much. And what I tend to do as a teacher is I sort of amp up the danger, the aspect of danger of like, oh, what do you think we're dealing with here? You know, and monster kind of is a trope for negative, isn't it? So it's all very exciting and novel. You give them lots of time to move through, make notes, talk to each other, and then sorry, yes.
Oh, Viv, Mabel just said Max and the Wild Things. So
she got it. She got it. So right. Good on you, Mabel. You're 6 steps ahead of us. And I will say, Mabel is much cleverer because I've never had a child guess, but that is indeed where we're going. But it wouldn't matter if she did. You know, it wouldn't matter if she did. We would say, so you've heard something about a wild thing. Tell me about wild things. What they tend to do is, you know, what do we make of this? What are these clues telling you about the monster? What kind of monster would be able to make these scratches so high up? What sort of teeth can make a bite like that? And then I often, to bring it together, I ask everyone to stand beside a clue in the room that they think is particularly significant. And then perhaps we could make a shared record of that. And sometimes I do that in role. Sometimes I'll go into role as the monster investigator chief and bark, you know, quite a high status kind of role, and invite the students to infer about each clue. Tell us, tell us about what you think about its strength, its size, and so on. This takes a full lesson usually. And children are often move towards the idea that what they've got to do is control, kill, capture. They go there because these are the tropes that you would associate with monsters and investigating monsters, right? So you can handle all that. And for step 10, really the simplest version of the final step of the key is providing the children with vocabulary and ideas and support, just saying, look, this is such a great story. this monster investigation, this monster that invaded this family's house. Maybe we want to write this story down. Maybe we could write the part about how the monster got into the house, or maybe you could decide what the investigators are doing next. So you can do that quite open-ended, just as a writing task. What I've done in the past is introduce another clue as the children are sort of we step out of the story, and as we're sort of tidying up all the clues, one of them finds this extra clue. I don't know if you can see that. Mabel, can you see that, Mabel? Can you see that? So it says, "Sorry about the mess." This is what the monster wrote. "I'm looking for my friend Max. I came very far." And it's signed Little Wild Thing. Goodness gracious. So of course, if they've gone to that kind of extreme of like shoot, kill, capture, then suddenly we've got a reverse. We've got a lovely tension, a lovely reverse. And especially if we filed reports to the chief about the kinds of measures we need to carry out and the, you know, action we need to take against this monster, suddenly we've then got to write another, you know, wonderful writing opportunities here for notes and corrections to reports and that kind of thing. And you know, as with all of our keys, once you've introduced that, you could maybe encounter that wild thing, or you could, you know, there's lots of other ways that you can take it, but that sort of takes us beyond this key. It's nice to introduce another sign that complicates the initial reaction, but I'm not going to explore all the places that we could take it, because I think that takes it beyond this key, if you know what I mean. What were you going to say, Tim?
Yeah, so I was just wanted to go back to the bit where you said before the note, because the note is playing a really important role.
Sure.
And I just wanted to go back to that, because this is often where things involving monsters and the unknown, as you say, the thing that a monster signifies is danger and unknown.
Sure.
And monsters come with an awful lot of pre-knowledge about what monsters are, and they're nearly always dangerous. So at that point, before they get the note, the children are very likely, as you say, to be thinking about, well, how can we mitigate the danger? What can we do to prevent this monster being dangerous to us and other people? And so they'll go to films and books and other things where there are monsters. And as you say, they'll start thinking, I mean, monsters do get a bad deal, don't they? Films, you know, generally.
They do.
But
they're very useful to us. They're very useful to us because they stand in for things that we despise and hate and need to be scared of when we don't want to do that to humans.
Right.
A monster can be, yeah.
Right. So as you say, it's a trope. So, but at that stage, you don't want to be counteracting their suggestions. So if you say, if they start suggesting, well, we're going to have to set a trap, or we ought to be ready to kill it, or whatever, you know, something like that. You don't want to be in the position of saying no, because as soon as you start saying no, you start shutting the whole thing down. And the children sort of go, "Oh, I know what this story is. This is an adult story. We've got to play along." Right. So you want to be sort of going, "Oh yeah, well, it might be dangerous. Of course, it might be. And it might be one of those monsters that eat people and all the rest of it. So we need to be prepared. You're right. We need to be cautious and be careful. And we may, you say, we may need to set a trap. That is entirely possible. Well, we'll come to that. We'll come to that bit of the story. So you're sort of you're saying yes, but yes, that is true, but not yet. We'll get there. Don't worry. So you're acknowledging it, but you're not getting caught up in the let's kill a monster or the no, let's shut that down, and getting worried that it's going the wrong way, because you've got the note, and the note trumps everything, because the note is coming from the story world. Now, of course, the irony, of course, is that you wrote the note, and the children probably are fully aware that you wrote the note. That doesn't matter. because the note is
It's
in the
never mattered.
story. So
Yeah.
the note takes priority of everything. So as soon as, and of course the children will, because if they're familiar with the book, which of course you would have made them familiar with the book before the story starts, they'll go, oh, it's the monsters from the Wild Thing. They didn't eat Max. They made him a king. So I wonder why one of those monsters is here and got trapped in here. And everything changes. Then suddenly the scratches on the wall and the footprints and in the book, everything is completely reframed. Because rather than a monster that's out of control and ripping apart a classroom or a house or something, maybe it's a monster that's lost. Maybe it's a monster that's panicking. And you put the little monster. So again, it kind of makes it vulnerable. And all these little things point towards the fact that this is a monster that needs our help.
And I think that's the true strength of my example. It's not necessarily built into the key, this strength. It's the way that I've used it. And I should acknowledge that I've adapted someone else's drama here, and in the book I do give the credit for that. I'm afraid I can't remember the name of the teacher at this stage, but yeah, I think that's what I love about this drama, is it's got that reversal, and it's got an enduring understanding about how it's human to judge people or things or others on their behavior and how we initially read them and how we get swept up. It's very human to do that, and I really like how the drama takes us there. As I say, that's particular to the example, but it was too good to not put in the book. So yeah, it is about reading signs and then suddenly rereading them a whole different way from a different perspective. So yeah, I hope that one makes sense. The key talks about a clue. We've got a bunch of clues and we solve it. But then in this case, if you don't need to introduce the note, you could just have it as a writing exercise about a monster investigation, and they can stay with the monster trope. There's heaps there. But I think I couldn't resist giving you the nice extra of the reversal that comes in the longer drama. So can you just flick us to the next slide there, Tim? Anybody got any questions about that example or how that's played out? You can see here on this slide, one of the reasons why this example, I think that one of the strengths is, children love monsters, and these children aren't actually doing this key. They're working with Tim on a monster island or a dinosaur island, but they just love the kind of earnest of monsters, don't they? So anything that's come up for you or questions you wanted to ask about that particular example before I quickly talk about advantages, limitations? Anything? It's difficult to get across quite how fun and successful it is. But yeah, it's one I can totally trust. And it's one at one time I did this with 75 5-year-olds and a few teachers to help. But I reckon if you can hold 75 5-year-olds' interest, you're doing all right. So
sorry, Kirsty, were you going to say something?
Kirsty, did you have something?
Yeah, I was. I mean, I don't want to digress too much, but working in the museum space, we do a lot of stuff with dinosaur footsteps on the ground, and trying to solve what they're doing. And it's kind of a different situation because it's not necessarily, I mean, the dinosaurs don't exist anymore, obviously, so they're not there, but it is a true we kind of put the children into this role of being a paleontologist, and so they have to solve what are these dinosaurs doing? Are they running? How fast are they going? What kind of dinosaurs are there? And that kind of thing. And it's just kind of interesting thinking about how this is similar but different. But I think lots of these kind of tools you can still use as well in this context, as well as I think
you are doing solve a clue there. Because you're giving them an adult role and you're saying, what does this tell us? What is this a clue telling us about dinosaurs in our story. Yeah, I don't know whether you signal and say, right, we're going to make a story. There's some dinosaur footprints kind of painted on the ground, and when we go, I don't know if you're doing that part, or if you're doing what I used to do and kind of making out that they're real, or whether it doesn't even really come up because you're in a museum, so they kind of know they're visiting a place where there are mysterious objects. It's definitely one for us to talk about, isn't it?
Yeah,
how we're
I mean, I guess it's just giving me some ideas that maybe it could be expanded out, a little bit more.
Cool.
Yeah. Anyway.
Yeah. I mean, I know that. Yeah, that thing, we'll talk about it here, but to me, the benefits of this, and I definitely invite you to come and say, oh, I can see this benefit, or I can see this limitation as well. I've just put my ideas here. To me, the benefits of the concrete objects, the concrete thing that the child can see, handle, move around, see in the space, that can really help some children make a dive into the fiction. A lot of our keys, we're talking about, what do you think's around us? What can we see? What we can imagine? And we want children to be able to get to that without any physical help. But there are children, especially those on the spectrum, the Asperger's spectrum, that really respond well to a physical thing. I am not on the spectrum as far as I know, but I love a thing. I do. I find a thing, a well-chosen thing, magic. I know the teacher made it, but it's like it's there and I can handle it. So that can be really good, and it does give a novelty element. And on some kind of meta level, the children know that you have gone to the trouble to do this for them, and they respond to that. A little bit of transformation, and in the space, and 35 footprints, and they kind of, it's a bit special. So I don't think we can underrate that. The clipboards, even the things to handle, they respond to that. They get that it's a gift to them. And even though in my example it's quite there's parameters are quite tight. We are monster investigators. There's a monster. There's still that whenever I do this lesson, there's always loads of potential for student ownership. They really feel that they can say a lot, they can create a lot. They know that I'm going to fold their ideas about this monster into that story. And if they then go away and write the story, there, like you were saying, Rachel, they've got the shape, but the flesh on the bones is there. So it's actually got loads of room for exploration. And on a purely practical note, as a teacher, if you've got a really good clue or set of clues that you can carry around in a bag and just bring out, it means you've got a lesson, you've got a good standby activity. If you've got, it's a bit like, well, probably with the other keys too, if you've got a really good book for tackle a problem, you've always got a lesson for a Friday afternoon at the end of term. Same with your clues. If you just need to zhuzh things up with your kids, if you go to the trouble of making your clues, you've kind of got that in a box. I don't know if you can see chime in if you can see other benefits that I haven't written there. I'll just assume you're going to wave and shout if you have something to add. In terms of limitations, the flip side of loving the stuff, I love my stuff, I love my bags, I think, is that we don't want drama making to kind of be relying on that. We don't want it to be an emphasis on stuff. We don't want the most important thing in the room to be the bits. We don't want teachers to feel they have to go and buy monster slippers. Which I did buy so that when I went into role as the monster, I could wear the monster slippers. We don't want it to be like that. So, the central values of dramatic inquiry is that you can make a whole world out of nothing. So we don't want to get too seduced by the stuff side of it. I think as well, one of the things I've had to manage, the energy that I've had to manage with this one, is that it can feel kind of game-like. It can feel a bit surfacey. They can get into, oh, we're going to hunt it, we're going to shoot it. Oh, look, race over here. So you've got to do things to kind of moderate that energy in the room. Often it's about, how you stand, how you kind of, often I'll say, no, we are going to need to tiptoe through the scene. And of course, people, if we could not touch the evidence, you have to set a tone of seriousness because there's so much novelty in the room. You know what I'm talking about, Tim? They can get very bouncy. But this next one, I think, is the main one. it can feel like it's better if you keep it real, if you make it real. So kids, something's landed in the back in the school playground. I think it's come from outer space. It's still smoking. Should we go and have a look? That can feel really magic. It's so easy to slip into that, but that's deluding the children. That's not setting up a dual awareness of fiction and reality. That's setting up frame confusion. And that might be, that might be cool, but it isn't dramatic inquiry. So it's not what we do. I don't actually think it is cool. I think it's quite I think it's a bit of a power trip. I think the main person having fun there is the teacher. And then the final thing I would say as a limitation is, there are times when the story that you're working with, it's important to retain that narrative, traditional stories, Puraco, that kind of thing. That if you're working in a museum with an artifact that is precious and has a story that goes with it, you're not going to start introducing that as a clue that people can just make up millions of other stories with, so you use it for open-ended exploration or guiding. It's okay, I think, with Where the Wild Things Are to write this sequel in which one of the wild things has come back and hunted for Max. I don't think that breaks Little Wild Thing, but we wouldn't do that with certain other stories or objects or artifacts. What do you think about links to literacy? Because I have run out of room on my slide, so I just thought I'd pose that as a question. Teachers, what links to literacy can you see here? What are we doing in terms of the literacy curriculum? This is one of those awkward silences that you get to fill. Because if we're going to do this in our literacy time, we got to be hitting the curriculum, right? So is it, and how is it?
It links to writing. It links to oral language. Come on, guys.
Yeah.
It's Sunday night here. Come on, she's just asked the question.
It also links to maths. It links to science.
Tell me about how it links to maths. How does it links to math?
The foot that you brought up, and you can go into the size to get the scaling. And
it will link to that if you put a deliberate act of teaching in there that links to that. I agree. Yeah. Like with any imagined world, you can go right across the curriculum because curriculum's there, right? Yeah.
What did you say? It was like pieces of fur, and now you can start to link in different types of fur, and then you get to go into a whole categorizing of fur and which animals have fur.
Yeah. So it could be a leaping off point into other things, right?
Absolutely. Yeah.
What were you going to say, Sue? You had something?
Oh, I was thinking it'd be pretty easy to come up with a description of a monster. They could come up with designing their own monster. You could talk about the backstory, how the monster got there, what his relationship with Max is like. I don't know, write a note to the monster encouraging it to come back and say that we can help.
Yeah, if you go,
lots of possibilities.
If you think about text types, then initially there's note taking. They're investigators, so they're going to need to write a report. The newspapers will be interested, so there may be newspaper stories. And as you say, Susan, there's going to be correspondence possibly between the team and the monster. That seems to be the way that they're communicating. So yeah, there's loads of links to literacy, I think.
Yeah, and you can use descriptive words to describe what
Thank you.
Yeah.
So what we've been talking about quite a bit of sort of possibilities for where it could go into next, but I think baked into the key itself is lots and lots of oral language, lots and lots of inferring, lots of reading symbols. It's one thing to see a footprint, to see a paper piece of paper cut in a shape. It's another thing to call it a footprint. It's another thing to infer the size of the animal that made that footprint, the creature that made that footprint. It's another thing to express that verbally to you, the child next to you. And it's another thing to write it down. And then it's another thing to turn that into formal language to report it back to the chief. That's actually kind of 4 or 5 things we've done, even baked into the task. And we can miss those changes and elaborations because it sort of seems so natural. It's another thing to connect the plastic, a piece of plastic with some felt tip pen on it, and see that as the scratch marks of the same creature that left the paper foot, and to make allowances for those symbols. You're doing pre-literacy because literacy is about symbolic substitution. So we're practicing how things stand for other things, especially with our 5-year-olds. So it's elaborate. It's really elaborate. And there's lots of hearing, speaking, choosing. If they feed back their report to the chief or to each other, they're going to do that in different language registers. So much going on here, so much. And I think all key competencies are here. If you're teaching in New Zealand, we've got understanding language, symbols and texts. Yeah. We've got participating, contributing. We've got managing self. What are the other ones? Gosh, they've left me. But I think we've got all key competencies in action here. So that's our time, actually. But as it's always going to be the way with these keys, because you've heard today this as being about these clues to do with monsters, you're going to think it's a monster key. That's what brains are going to do with it. But remember, can you just move us on, Tim? Remember that we can have that. These clues were an invitation into a world about monsters. It could be an invitation into a world about dinosaurs. It could be an invitation into a world about a piece of history or something like that. So have a go. One of the advantages, of course, of the book is that we give you the 2 examples, but we also give you the pared down steps. So your challenge would be to go back and try and think of this in a completely different context. Put monsters out of your mind and see if you can think of a different one. If you're someone who enjoys making things, this is a fun key to start with. And yeah, as we've repeatedly emphasized, do remember when you're planning this, the importance of signaling it, literally saying, so this is a thing I made out of paper mache because I thought this would be great for our story. Because you don't want that little kid like Viv was, just stunned and unable to think straight because their reality has just broken down. You don't want a kid coming home and saying, no, we've got dinosaurs alive in New Zealand now because my teacher told me. That's what happened with me and my children, and remember to plan to give the students a role within the imagined world, the experts who will, the high knowledge team who will be solving that clue. This is not about them responding to the clues themselves. Of course it is, they're doing that as well, but in the story they need another identity to do it. So it won't take you long, I think, to think of different contexts in which there might be clues left behind.
Can I ask a question? Sorry, this is entirely self-indulgent. And you don't have dinosaurs in the North Island, do you? You're not the land.
Yeah, we do. We had dinosaurs.
Have you got fossils in the North Island? Do they?
We do. Yeah.
Oh, right. Okay.
Yeah.
All right. So
I think we do in the North Island. Do we, Kirsty?
we do.
Yeah.
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 Okay. Right.
We've got a rather fantastic amateur paleontologist called Joan Whiffen found dinosaurs in New Zealand relatively recently. Like when was she?
In the Hawke's Bay.
In Hawke's Bay.
She found them in the 70s, 60s and 70s. Yeah, in the Hawke's Bay.
People didn't believe her.
Are they sea
People didn't believe her.
Are they
no, there were some terrestrial ones too.
Wow. Okay.
Probably a tetrapod. They find only small single bones, so can't tell exactly what they are, but we know that they're, like a T-Rex, but probably not a T-Rex. And there's a couple of others too.
Sorry.
And it's wonderful how recent the dinosaur history knowledge is in New Zealand, because until 70s the kind of understanding was that we didn't have them, and she wasn't taken seriously. So she's a wonderful person to encounter.
I'll look that up.
Yeah, no, we've done some lovely dramas about her.
Sorry.
So yeah,
No,
it's a great question. Can you just flick us to the next slide so I can remember what we're doing to wrap up? I think what we're doing is inviting you, when you do go away, to have a think, and to have a go with a clue, to remember to pop it into our shared planning space. Is anybody kind of going, I know what I'm going to do? Is anybody able to put monsters aside and go, I know, I might make a go? Sue, what's your clue going to be?
I wish I'd had this earlier in the year when I created a case for a Chinese miner full of artifacts, and it would have given me much more of a much better structure and a much more careful way in. The kids knew that I'd made it up, but they did. I needed to give them a little bit more guidance, I think, you know, the idea of having a clipboard with maybe some helpful questions to sort of, I think, I definitely want to go away now and think about how I could redo that.
I love the idea of a suitcase of objects that evokes a person. I was in a drama recently where that was used as a launch, and it was great. And I really could feel as a child, the inner child in me, having a problem with what was in the suitcase, because like we're literally being asked to examine these objects as historical artifacts, but nobody said, and I've put these in there to make us think of her. And so the critic in me was going, well, that's been made by a modern overlocker. You know, that's modern stitching. And I couldn't undo that thinking because I hadn't been invited to see it as a modern symbol of someone else. So I was like, I was caught. Whereas if someone had said, so these are modern things I've collected together, but I thought we might see how they might evoke that time and that person from the story, that would have actually cleared that problem away for me, and I could have just seen it as a piece of material that might have been part of her dress. You know what I mean? It didn't spoil it. It kind of spoiled it not having it, having the teacher be really clear that, I've put these together, but I thought we might do something wonderful with them. So suitcases full of objects that evoke a person. That's a great idea. Anybody else got one they already know they might try? No. Well, go away and have a think. It's about the boundary object. It's about the intriguing thing that might pull you into that world. So come back next time and tell us how you got on if you'd like to. I think that's us. I think that's us for tonight. Tonight in New Zealand time. In the morning, Tim's going to do the same, take us through the same process, but using his example, which is, I think, a mysterious egg. So we're gonna see what the children make of that. And you can just see already we're not going to end up with monsters because it's not an invitation into that world, or maybe it depends what's going to hatch out of the egg, really, doesn't it? Could be.
Right.
We'll find out. So our next get together team is on the 4th of February. It will be great to see you if you can join us then. Thank you very, very much for being part of tonight's discussion, and so exciting to hear the things that you have tried since last time. It doesn't do your heart good, Tim? We put this thing together, send it out there, and people are using it and it's working. Yay. So thank you very, very much. Anything else you'd like to say to finish us up, Tim?
No, just the same thing. It's the crack of dawn. In fact, I think it's still dark, so it's not even the crack of dawn in the UK. Ulysses, it's the middle of the night in Mexico. So thank you all for coming. And even though it's so early in the morning, it is still really fantastic to talk to you and hear all the
invigorating
things that are going on and the way the book's being used. So thank you. Thank you very much.
And before we see you again, there'll be significant holidays for some of us, and summer holidays here and winter holidays in other places. So go celebrate whatever you celebrate in this time. Take a rest, And we look forward to seeing you if you can join us in February. So thank you all for your commitment to the children and the adults that you teach. And thanks for showing up and exploring this book with you. We look forward to seeing you next time. Ka kite anō. Good night, everyone.
Okay,